Top stories making headlines this evening. A ruling on the Murupisi recusal application is set for tomorrow, delaying judgment on the state's appeal. There are renewed calls for stronger action against GBV as figures show that on average 4 women and girls were raped during festive. And John Mahama has been sworn as Ghana's president for the 3rd term. Good evening and welcome to our 7 p.m. live. It's a great pleasure to be with you once again. My name is Kinali Mudizantima. A ruling on an application by Katamuro PC, who is seeking the recusal of Judge Meseha Rekwe from presiding over his case, has been set for tomorrow. The application meant that a judgment on the state's appeal, which had been expected this afternoon, will be delivered after the ruling on the recusal matter. The former permanent secretary to the president claims Judge Rekwe is biased and lacks impartiality that she has ruled against him in related cases. Rupisi claims Judge Rekwe tried to persuade the attorney for one of the defendants, Tia Morantau, not to abandon their initial application for stay of execution of the rulings by Judges Zain Kibonang and Ruben Lokure that freed him. He argues that Judge Rekwe is heavily embedded in the matter and could not hide her desire to see him languish in prison. Rupisi argued that the judge is biased and prejudicial against him. He added that even worse is the fact that Rekwe was nominated by Justice Dr. Sin Walia, against whose sentencing he successfully complained at the High Court. He also stated that Justice Rekwe adjudicated over the liquidation of Capital Management Botswana, which company is linked to his charges and ultimate conviction and sentence. Responding to Murupisi, the state argued that the application for the recusal of Judge Meseha Rekwe is incompetent. It said Murupisi was aware of his version of all the pertinent material prior to the hearing of the urgent application for an expedited appeal Sunday, and that he took no action to apply for a recusal. YTV News, Gaborone. Gender advocacy organization Feminist Alliance Botswana has called for stronger action against gender-based violence. This after police statistics indicated that on average 4 women and girls were raped every day during the festive period. Police statistics show that 60 women and girls were raped in just 15 days from between December 19th and January 2nd, while 19 were killed and 13 defiled. Feminist Alliance Botswana says these figures represent a grim reminder of the pervasive violence that women and girls continue to face. FAB has called on the Ministry of Justice and Correctional Services and the police to prioritize GBV cases, ensuring timely investigations, prosecutions and convictions for perpetrators. Last month, Gender Affairs Minister Lesego Chombo acknowledged in Parliament that gender-based violence remains a growing global concern with alarming rates of increase. She emphasized that the government's ongoing efforts to educate the nation and cap the rising cases of GBV.
I am aware of the number and the rising number of gender-based violence cases, not just in Tati East, Honorable Member, but in Botswana as a whole. This is a disturbing trend, as gender-based violence is not just a serious violation of human rights, but it's a major barrier to achieving gender equality and also just having a productive citizenry. Women and children continue to be disproportionately affected by gender-based violence, and the survivors usually experience long-lasting psychological scars. Ka jalo re tshwanetse go tswella go sedimosa setšhaba re sale maitamo a rona morago a go lwantsha serusi. The ministry, honorable members, is also aware of the inhumane and heart-wrenching slaughter of the 3 children by their father, Kotati East, and this incident left all of us in shock. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, what does murder of children have to do with gender-based violence? Kokontsho ya bong re solohela e akaretsa polao ya baratani. Mme ke tsaya sebaka se to say that murder of children is a haunting emerging trend. Currently, it is a trend of intimate partner revenge where a partner resorts to punishing another through ending the lives of innocent children.
Minister Chombo added that the ministry has implemented various measures to tackle the issue. These include collaborations with stakeholders such as churches, traditional leaders, law enforcement agencies, and civil society organizations. She said their main goal is to educate communities and raise awareness about GBV.
Activities that are undertaken in this regard include public education and awareness raising, community dialogues as well, with different groups of women, of men, of girls, of boys, of persons living with disability, of their caretakers. We also have dialogues with religious organizations, with various service providers, as well as with the private sector. And this is being done countrywide. Secondly, to curb gender-based violence, renale a response mechanism. We have preventative measures, and then there's a response mechanism to support the victims by gender-based violence. There are services that are provided to victims and survivors, which include psychosocial support and care, as well as a shelter wherever there is need to remove these victims or survivors to a place of safety. And at these shelters, the survivors are supported with access to health, education, where children are involved, with legal, social, spiritual services as per their specific needs. And ki itumella go itse gore go na le shelter e leng gore lephata le bereka le yone e bitswa the Botswana Gender-Based Violence Prevention and Support Center e leng gore ikile be itsewe e le Kagisanyo Women's Shelter. Ba leng gore ba na le di office mo Gaborone le mo Francistown, of which 30 residents are beneficiaries of.
Parliament has been told that the Ministry for State President under the previous regime awarded 8 tenders worth over 1.1 billion pula to non-citizen-owned companies through direct appointment method, whereas 110 local companies got just 200 million pula. This was revealed by Assistant Minister of State President Maipilo Moputin in the last sitting of Parliament in December. Moputin said the new government will undertake a forensic audit across all ministries and state agencies.
I have been informed that from October 2019 to October 2024, a total of 118 tenders were awarded through direct appointment method, amounting to 1,379,178,246. I have been further informed that out of these 118 tenders, a total of 110 tenders were 100% citizen-owned companies, generating 259,546,634 and 66 thebe. Now, the remaining 8, I'm told, were non-citizen, generating 1,119,000,000 pula, 610,034 thebe. Mr. Speaker, as stated in the SONA 2024, the government will intake, without a doubt, will intake a financial and forensic audit to investigate, identify waste, corruption, and inefficiencies across all ministries and parastatals. This inquiry, Mr. Speaker, will of course include my ministry, being the Ministry of State President. Where corruption and maladministration is identified, rest assured that the perpetrators will be brought to book. They will be brought to book, but we follow due processes. Honorable Hikuama Sibuama Abanokor, we say that we are a human rights-centric government, so we must allow the processes to unfold. Where we find we cannot preempt the outcome. We are in the process of carrying out those forensic audits, and in due time,
And when we return after a short break, John Mahama has been sworn as Ghana's president for the 3rd time. Stay with us for more news.
Podium 2, please read out your answer.
Afternoon.
Podium 3, please read out your answer.
Afternoon.
Podium 4, please read out your answer.
Afternoon.
What role does the bottle play in the environment? Diseases that are mostly transmitted through unprotected sexual intercourse are called what?
This is Aretsuge, a show that profiles as well as market SMMEs right here in Botswana. We ensure that we give them this platform to advertise themselves, as we know that marketing and advertising, market penetration really is very difficult in Botswana. So this show will be bringing you those SMMEs to give you an idea of what exactly it is that young people are getting up to in Botswana in business. My name is Orafile Kipikile and I will be bringing you all of that action.
I'm a young man of 25 years old from Maun. Yes, but I grew up outside Maun. I grew up in Silibe Pikwe.
If anybody knows us, and I'm sure a lot of people will be familiar with this area, grew up in Area L, that's where we lived, so a lot of people must know this hood for sure.
Like, even though we are artistic, Modimo has invested so much in every one of us, you know.
Welcome back to our 7 p.m. Live, and thank you for tuning in. In our international news, John Mahama has been sworn as president for the third time, just as the country faces its worst economic crisis in a generation. Mahama won the presidential election late last year after pledging to tackle the economic crisis, corruption and unemployment. The 65-year-old, who was previously Ghana's president between July 2012 and January 2017, replaces former President Nana Akufo-Addo.
Cheers and applause as John Mahama was sworn in as president. It marks his third time in the role, having last served from July 2012 to January 2017. The 65-year-old clinched a victory in the election late last year. He's vowed to fight against corruption, reduce unemployment, and put the country's economy back on its feet.
The circumstances we find ourselves in are indeed dire. But even so, I'll be decisive and swift in my actions. We'll focus our initial efforts on 4 critical areas. The first is economic restoration and stabilization of the macroeconomic environment.
Young people were among the crowd at the inauguration. They're hoping that the new president will bring positive change to the country.
When our former president was in, we were facing a lot of challenges, and when we completed SHS, it's hard for our parents to help us to move on.
Most of us are graduates who are unemployed, so we are looking up to him to at least, yes, find a way to find two staffs and then get us the jobs so that we could also have something to take home and make our parents that are home that have suffered to get us where we are happy.
The presidential vote in December was viewed as a litmus test for democracy in a region that has seen a wave of coups. Mahama is taking office as the country faces its worst economic crisis in a generation.
A veteran Ugandan opposition figure has appeared in court on terrorism charges. Kiza Besegi was reportedly taken in a covert operation while visiting neighboring Kenya in November. He was then flown to Uganda bypassing formal extradition proceedings. He is a well-known critic of Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni and has challenged him for the presidency 4 times. Al Jazeera's Catherine Soyi reports.
Cheers and applause as John Mahama was sworn in as president. It marks his third time in the role, having last served from July 2012 to January 2017. The 65-year-old clinched a victory in the election late last year. He's vowed to fight against corruption, reduce unemployment, and put the country's economy back on its feet.
The circumstances we find ourselves in are indeed dire. But even so, I'll be decisive and swift in my actions. We'll focus our initial efforts on 4 critical areas. The first is economic restoration and stabilization of the macroeconomic environment.
Young people were among the crowd at the inauguration. They're hoping that the new president will bring positive change to the country.
When our former president was in, we were facing a lot of challenges, and when we completed SHS, it's hard for our parents to help us to move on.
Most of us are graduates who are unemployed, so we are looking up to him to at least, yes, find a way to find two staffs and then get us the jobs so that we could also have something to take home and make our parents that are home that have suffered to get us where we are happy.
The presidential vote in December was viewed as a litmus test for democracy in a region that has seen a wave of coups. Mahama is taking office as the country faces its worst economic crisis in a generation.
And now in business news, driven by rapid urbanization, increasing infrastructure, development projects, and rising construction activity, Africa's cement market is surging. The boom is also resetting the continent's cement production landscape with the entry of new players.
Driven by rapid urbanization, increasing infrastructure development projects, and rising construction activity, Africa's cement market is surging. The boom is also resetting the continent's cement production landscape with the entry of new players. Facing a stagnant property market which has affected prices and stringent environmental regulations back home, Chinese cement makers have been running to establish or acquire operations in Africa. Led by Huashen, Chinese companies invested in 9 new cement projects in Africa in 2023 and 5 in 2024.
We've got this enormous infrastructure deficit in Africa. We've got this enormous demographic story that's continuing to play out. And therefore, I think the Chinese are looking at the medium term and saying to themselves, you know, this is potentially another China, not so monolithic, not so linear, but potentially a similar story. And I think that's what they're really looking at.
With 10 cement plants with a production capacity of about 18 million tonnes per year, Huashen is now sub-Saharan Africa's second largest cement producer. Dangote remains the region's leading cement maker with an annual capacity of 52 million tonnes. Industry experts predict demand to stay strong in Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya and Ghana.
With respect to the likes of Dangote, Dangote understands Africa. I mean, we know that. So I expect him to grow his business. He took a big bet. I think that bet will spread geographically. And I expect the Chinese also, you know, this Huashen cement expansion, I think, is going to be the start of something much bigger as more Chinese players enter the market. And I should expect other BRICS types entities to look at the African continent more aggressively, India, for example, and maybe even the likes of Brazil.
Cement production is associated with pollution. Experts say African governments need to emphasize environmental sustainability and to enact strong policies to balance growth with local industry development.
In other business news, Eurozone inflation accelerated in December, an unwelcome but anticipated blip that is unlikely to derail further interest rate cuts from the European Central Bank.
Eurozone inflation accelerated in December. The unwelcome but anticipated blip is unlikely to derail further interest rate cuts from the European Central Bank, though. Inflation in the 20 nations sharing the euro picked up to 2.4% last month from 2.2% in November, in line with expectations. It was lifted by more expensive energy and stubbornly high services costs. Inflation has been oscillating just above the ECB's 2% target recently, and data over the next few months could remain choppy. But the overall trend is expected to point downwards, with the ECB's goal likely to be hit sometime in the second half of the year. The central bank cut interest rates 4 times last year and said its target is now within sight. More policy easing is coming, although the speed and timing remain subject to debate. Price growth excluding volatile food and energy held at 2.7%, and the closely watched services component, the single biggest item in the consumer price basket, accelerated to 4% from 3.9%. A strong dollar in recent weeks has been making imports of key commodities more expensive, and that's feeding through to prices via more expensive energy, including car fuel. The dollar could rise even more if the new US administration implements its trade tariff proposals.
And coming up next after a short break is the sports update.
Welcome to yet another exciting edition of Eco Africa.
And I'm Chris Alems in Lagos, Nigeria.
Once a month, Hassan Bello takes a dive to search for waste. Though visibility underwater is low, he and his colleagues don't have to dive too deep, since plastic floats towards the surface. Lake Victoria, Africa's biggest freshwater lake, is full of trash.
I'm a young man of 25 years old from Maun. Yes, but I grew up outside Maun. I grew up in Silibe Pikwe.
If anybody knows us, and I'm sure a lot of people will be familiar with this area, grew up in Area L, that's where we lived, so a lot of people must know this hood for sure.
Like, even though we are artistic, Modimo has invested so much in every one of us, you know.
Coral reefs are among the most diverse ecosystems on Earth, but they're increasingly threatened by climate change and pollution. One British artist has taken it upon himself to help save these vital habitats, one paper cut at a time.
And now taking a look at the world of sports tonight. In Formula One, Red Bull's racing partnership with cryptocurrency platform Bybit has officially came to an end ahead of the 2025 season. The 3-year deal, which started in 2022, valued at $150 million US, was one of the most prominent sponsorships in the team's portfolio, second only to the title sponsorship by Oracle.
The 2025 Formula One season is approaching, and team backstage moves are at an accelerated pace. For Red Bull, the undisputed leader in recent championships, the transformations are not restricted to the tracks. Milton Keynes has seen its list of sponsors undergo significant changes, including the departure of one of the biggest names attached to the team in recent years. This change is accompanied by a series of financial and strategic restructuring, which has a direct impact on the future of the team. The Anglo-Austrian team, known for its ability to attract large investors, now faces the challenge of reconfiguring their supports, even keeping Oracle's main sponsor in a contract valued at an impressive US $100 million annually. However, what motivated these changes? Among the most significant losses is the exit of cryptocurrency company Bybit. Since its entry in 2022, Bybit has been one of the most visible brands on Red Bull cars, occupying prominent space on the front and rear wings of vehicles. The initial deal, valued at $150 million for 3 years, seems solid, but the relationship comes to an end, reflecting recent turmoil in the cryptocurrency market. The crisis in this financial sector had already hit other giants of Formula One, such as the partnership between Mercedes and FXT, ended dramatically after the financial collapse and the fraud scandals involving the exchange. Despite this, the exit of Bybit is not only another chapter in the crypto market's slump in phone, but also an indication that Red Bull is looking to diversify its sources of funding. Another relevant change is the departure of sponsors associated with Sergio Perez. Companies linked to Mexican tycoon Carlos Slim, such as telecommunications company América Móvil, have chosen to end their ties with the team after the early termination of Perez's contract. According to sources, this exit also reflects the interest of new partners, such as ATT, in expanding their presence in the team, aiming to consolidate as the main telecommunications brand linked to Red Bull. These changes make it clear that Red Bull is in a moment of transition, even amid success on the tracks. The Milton Keynes team will have to balance the loss of weight sponsors with the search for new strategic alliance.
That was all the sports update for tonight, and before we end the bulletin, let's recap the headlines. A ruling on the Morupisi recusal application set for tomorrow, delaying judgment on the state's appeal. There are renewed calls for stronger action against GBV as figures show that on average 4 women and girls were raped during festive, and John Mahama has been sworn as Ghana's president for the 3rd time. That is all the news we had for you tonight. Thank you once again for watching YTV. From myself, the King and author of announcement, and the rest of the YTV news team, have a blessed night.